The Massacres in Arba Gugu and Bedeno. In 1991, during the transitional period following the collapse of the Derg regime and the rise of Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF-led government, a series of pogroms targeting Amharas took place across Ethiopia. Amharas had lived for generations across the valleys and highlands of Arsi and eastern Hararga, particularly within what was then the Arsi province. These communities extended from the Bale border along the Vebe River through the highlands of Anola and Chol, forming a long-standing presence in the region. These were the locations where some of the earliest anti-Amhara pogroms unfolded. One of the first occurred in Arba Gugu, southeast of Ethiopia's capital, where the violence took the form of a campaign of arson and arbitrary killings. Groups of armed rebels identifying with the Oromo Liberation Front, OLF, and its local affiliates moved through the districts of Jeju and Arba Gugu, as well as surrounding towns and villages across Arsi and eastern Hararg. The rebels arrived in the area, moving from house to house, giving Amhara families ultimatums to abandon the land they had lived on and farmed for generations or face death. Those who hesitated, resisted, or failed to flee in time were killed. In village after village, the roofs of Amhara homes were set ablaze. While Arba Gugu was the epicenter, additional killings and arsons were reported across the surrounding areas. Official human rights reports, based on survivor testimony, described how those unable to flee, the elderly, the sick, and the infirm, were left to burn inside their homes. Some were locked inside their homes, while others were abandoned when family members were forced to run. Tens of thousands fled, scattering into nearby forests and beginning a desperate journey toward Nazareth, the nearest urban center about 50 to 100 kilometers northwest of Arba Gugu, while carrying children and the injured. Within days, the area was effectively ethnically cleansed of Amharas. In April 1992, a separate but related massacre took place in the town of Bedeno in eastern Hararge. There, the violence assumed the form of mass execution. Based on the findings of a 1992 inquiry, more than 250 Amhara civilians were rounded up by ULF rebels. They were then detained in a local school and other makeshift holding centers. Some were held for days without food or water, before being marched to the edge of a ravine. Witnesses testified that wire and nylon ropes were used to bind victims together in small groups. At the ravine's edge they were pushed. Some were shot before they fell. Others fell alive while tied to those already dead or dying. When investigators reached the site, they found human remains scattered across the ravine floor. Reports confirmed that many victims died from the impact of the fall, while others survived the initial drop and died later from injuries or starvation. These atrocities were investigated by both international organizations and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, then led by Prof. Mesfin Vold Mariam. The commission conducted field investigations, collected survivor testimony, and confirmed large-scale killings, forced displacement, and the destruction of Amhara communities in both Arba Gugu and Bedeno. Its findings were corroborated by international reports, affirming that Amhara civilians were deliberately targeted. Yet even with this domestic and international confirmation, no meaningful action followed. The perpetrators were not appropriately prosecuted, and the findings did not translate into protection, restitution, or justice for survivors. These massacres occurred under a TPLF-led transitional government, reinforced by an ideology shared by TPLF, ULF, and the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, EPLF, that framed Amharas as historical oppressors and settlers, even on land they had inhabited for generations. Arba Gugu and Bedeno established an early precedent for how Amharas could be dehumanized, displaced, and killed without consequence, a precedent that continues to shape the present. The current Amhara struggle is the consequence of these decades-long normalized acts of genocide, and a political system and ideology that treats Amhara existence itself as a problem to be managed. Until the systems and ideologies that normalize these crimes are dismantled, the cycle set in motion in the early 1990s will continue.